Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. We're waiting for our guest, Scott Ritter, to come into the booth. So until he comes in the booth, let's chop it up. Let me tell you a few things that's been going on. And it gives me the perfect opportunity to talk to you before he joins the platform. Now, I've had a few things going on in the background. My monetization was suspended by YouTube. I don't know why. We're trying to figure out what's going on. More subscribers were taken from me. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Also, I haven't slept in 48 hours. I want to give you that. And on top of that, we've been hit by some bad weather, real bad weather, tornadoes and everything like that. As a matter of fact, part of a tree is on my house right now. I'm not at home at this moment. There's no power at my house, so I'm broadcasting on the other side of town, my mother's house. So if you hear people come in and out, you know that mother's house is the central house to the whole family, okay? So people come in and go out, all that stuff like that. So you guys got to look past that. I was doing my best to keep the show scheduled just like we had with Scott Ritter because I could not reach him because all of my phones were dead. My computers were dead, all of that stuff. So I had to rush over here, try to plug in everything, try to make sure that the stuff has enough available power to do the show. And we're waiting for Scott right now. As a matter of fact, while I'm talking to you all, let me play a little clip. I wanna play a little clip. And then while the clip is playing, I'm going to hit Scott up real quick, see if I can leave a message on just to give him a reminder that, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. Okay, so just give me a second. Let me hit you up with a little clip. We've already played this clip before, but I want you to listen to it. And when we come back, if Scott's not in the booth at that, oh, there he is right there, so I don't have to do it. There he is right there. So let me bring in my distinguished partner, my colleague right here, Scott Ritter. Scott, how's it going, man?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. First thing I want to do is ask you, how was your trip in Russia?
It was, look, I've been around, next month I'll be 62 years old, and I've traveled around the world several times. I've seen the show, as people would say. The 26 days that I spent in Russia represented one of the most awesome, awe-inspiring, and emotional journeys of my life. And I've been to war, done some pretty remarkable things. I've been involved in some historic events, all of which, I'm not trying to take away from, but this trip was. I'm still trying to absorb exactly what the trip meant and how best to describe it, how to package it, how to present it, because it was more than just 26 days. It was more than just a book tour. It was more than tourism. It was all of that, and it was none of that. This was a journey of discovery of the Russian soul, and like any good journey of discovery, it's not just about learning about something new. It's what that journey teaches you about yourself and about that which you come from, about America, etc. So this was truly a fantastic, once in a lifetime opportunity that I only hope that I prove worthy of.
Did you get a chance to meet any of the officials, or did you get a chance to check the temperature of what Russians are thinking about this Ukrainian war and the West's covert war against them?
Absolutely. I mean, look, Russia is a nation of war. At war. Let there be no doubt about that. In America, we have allowed this conflict to go on by proxy, and so we provide weaponry, we provide money, we provide training, logistics to Ukrainians who are being slaughtered, by the way, on the battlefield, thanks to America. But the average American doesn't live as if we're a nation at war. The average Russian wakes up every morning knowing that they are a nation at war. It's a war of existential survival. And it weighs heavily on their minds. They are concerned about what's happening, but they are also determined that victory will be theirs, and they are confident in their leadership to deliver that victory. And I think this confidence is well placed. Again, Americans being Americans, I'm not picking on them. I'm just calling it out as I see it. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, gave a speech today at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. If you didn't watch that speech, that's okay. I mean, it's tough sometimes for people to watch it. Watch it. Wait till the subtitles come out. If you can't speak Russian, watch it. It will go down in history as one of the most important speeches of our time. And I have to tell you right now, if I were to list the top 10 speeches of the last century, Vladimir Putin would have 3 of them included in that. And this speech would squeeze out another one and give him 4. It's that important what he said. And I'll just deliver it in a nutshell. You and I have talked about the importance of arms control and the danger posed by nuclear weapons. And Putin basically said, we've been trying to work with the West for a long time on arms control, and you guys told us no. So now we've built nuclear weapons, and we have more nuclear weapons and better nuclear weapons than you. And now you want to talk. And then you used the term, Chrin im. Now, Chrin is a term that means horseradish. Im is them. But in this term, it's a colloquialism. For instance, if I said pound sand, you'd know what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I said it meant something else, you know what I mean, right? So when you say Chrin im, it means something else. It doesn't mean horseradish. It means, and he said it on national TV to the Russian audience live when the notion came up of responding to America's, Jake Sullivan saying, well, we're serious about arms control. Chrin im. That's the Russian approach. And while we can chuckle about it right now, it's deadly serious because it means that Russia has no intention of yielding to American demands, and that we live in a very dangerous world. He also said something else. Let it be understood, he said, there's only one nation that has used nuclear weapons, and that's the United States. And they use them preemptively against a non-nuclear threat twice. He said, so he finds it a little bit strange that America's accusing him of posing a nuclear threat. He said, we don't pose a nuclear threat to anybody. We've made it clear we will only use nuclear weapons if the fate of our nation's at risk, and then we will use them all. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear war here. We will use them all, and everybody will die. Because he didn't necessarily say it this time, but he said it before, a world without Russia is not a world worth living in. And so he says, if you want to threaten the existence of Russia, understand you are simply threatening your own existence because we will kill every single one of you. But don't blame us. Don't accuse us of threatening people. America is the only country that used nuclear weapons, and they set the standard.
Well, what does the average person in Russia think and say about this covert war that is being waged on their nation right now through their Slavic brothers?
Well, like anything, to say, I mean, I know your question, but I just want to be accurate in my response. I don't want people to think that I'm biting off more than I can chew. Russia's a nation of 158 million people. I may have spoken to 1,000 of them, so I can't claim that I know what the average is, because to get the average, I'd have to speak about 70 some odd million of them. But I would say that, but what we do know in America is that polls come out and say, 56% of Americans believe X, and they only interviewed 40 people. So, okay. But I just want to make sure people know that I'm not trying to claim to have, this wonderful insight. But I will say this. I traveled to 12 cities in 26 days. And I met a lot of people, and I talked to a lot of people. And these weren't just officials. I met working class people. I met bureaucrats. I met single mothers. I met soldiers. I met a whole bunch of people. And without exception, they view this struggle as an existential struggle for Russia, meaning that Russia's survival's on the line. Remember what I said about nuclear weapons and Russian survival? Understand what we're talking about here, America. This ain't a game. Okay, you may wake up this morning in your nice little warm American home and go and have your American breakfast and go do whatever you want to do and turn on the TV and chuckle when somebody says something about Ukraine, and you can, virtue signal by putting the Ukrainian flag on your computer, and you can do whatever you want. You can spit when they say Vladimir Putin's name. I don't care. But this isn't a game. And the consequences of this game, if everything happened that you think you want to happen against Russia, you're going to die. End of story. You're going to die. So I don't understand what people are doing here. Do you really love Ukraine enough to sacrifice your entire family? If that was the case, then why haven't you sold everything, volunteered, and go over to Ukraine to help them win this war? I'll tell you why, because you're a coward. You're also intellectually weak. You also stand for nothing. You're somebody who sits at home and you virtue signal. You can't claim to support Ukraine and do nothing. All right? If you support Ukraine, you can't sit there and let the United States government do what it's doing, because if the United States were to succeed in doing what it's doing, Russia will drop a nuclear bomb on you and you will die. End of story. So if you want Ukraine to win, Ukraine needs to win organically. All right? Ukraine needs to do it themselves. But understand that this is the army that Russia is destroying right now on the battlefield is the third Ukrainian army NATO has trained since 2015. The first one, all 260,000 of them, got destroyed between February 2022 and June of 2022. The second one, the survivors of the first, combined with 80,000 new Ukrainian soldiers, maybe 10,000 mercenaries, was destroyed between July 2022 and, say, March of 2023. And now we have a new Ukrainian army, 60,000, with all these wonderful NATO weapons, by the way. I mean, you've heard about the miracle weapon, the Leopard tank, the Bradley fighting vehicle. Oh, my goodness. If the Ukrainians ever got their hands on those, boy, would the Russians pay a price. Well, the Ukrainians had their hands on those, and they're all dying. Everything's destroyed. They're not going to win. So the third NATO army is being destroyed as we speak. There's a fourth one being built. It will be destroyed. It's not going to succeed. All that's going to happen is the people you claim to care about are going to die, are all going to die. Putin in his speech today basically said it's all over for Ukraine. And when Putin speaks, you should listen. Remember that there was that old commercial in the United States when I forget who it was, when so-and-so speaks, everybody listens. And so the guy's Putin, everybody does this. Well, everybody in America should be doing this right now, because what Putin just said is that thanks to NATO, Ukraine is done as a nation, finished. It's over. There won't be a Ukraine. Whatever's left will be tattered, condemned. The people are condemned. Russia is going to destroy. Russia is destroying Ukraine, but it's going to destroy Ukraine. And that's because of the United States and NATO. So yay, put that Ukrainian flag back up on your computer, guys, because thanks to you and your virtue signaling, people you claim to care about, but you know nothing about, are all going to die, displaced, or suffer for the rest of their lives. And I'm sure you're going to feel so bad about it that you're going to go and sell your home and send that money to Ukraine so they can live happily ever after. You're not, because you're hypocrites. But this is the point. This is an existential struggle. This is about Russian survival, and every Russian knows it. The Russians that disagreed with Putin, they left. Remember? They opened up the gates. They said, go. And they all went, hi, we're out of here. And the rest of Russia went, good riddance, because we don't need you. We don't want you. Get out of here. Well, 80% of those heroes who fled Russia are calling home. Mm-hmm. Mommy, can I come home? And like the prodigal son, they want to return home and get hugged by the father. Now, the Russians aren't too keen about hugging them right now. Maybe down the road they will. But they recognize, they came to the West, and they understand that the West is nothing but a lying sack of manure. Mm-hmm. The West doesn't care about anything, let alone them. We'll use them as a signal. Oh, you hate Putin? I hate Putin. Put his face on TV, so he says he hates Putin. You hate Putin? I hate Putin. Now leave. But wait a minute. I left Russia. Why aren't you going to help me? Because we don't care about you. You're nothing. Zero. We got what you wanted from you. You said you hate Putin. We now have a talking point. You don't matter. And that's how we treat everybody, including the Ukrainians. They don't matter. Well, for the Russians, Russians matter. They wake up every morning loving their country, loving their nation, loving their soldiers, and deeply supporting the cause that they're fighting for. And as Putin said today, he said, you guys do understand that this war has been going on since 2014, when the Ukrainian army was unleashed on the population of the Donbass. Someone said, war? E.F. Hutton talks. There you go. Thank you, Real 2 Talk. When E.F. everybody listens. But, they said, that people said, how could you call this a war? He said, well, I don't know. Gosh, they were using tanks, artillery, armored fighting vehicles, and airplanes. If that's not a war, I don't know what is. So the Ukrainian government, the illegal coup-induced government, declared war on the Russian people in April of 2014, called it an anti-terrorist operation. And they've been viewing the citizens of the Donbass as terrorists ever since. And so, people are like, well, Russia started this war in February 2022. And Putin's like, no. We're just finishing this war. You forced us to get involved to bring this war to an end, because otherwise it would have just gone on forever and people would have died. This is the reality that every Russian knows and understands. And people need to realize that the Russian people, there's always this belief that, here's the other good one, if we just sanction them more, we'll cause economic harm, and the Russian people will give up. They'll surrender. They'll tell Putin to go to hell. They'll do something. Well, every Russian has one sentence for Joe Biden about the sanctions. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. You see, the Russian economy today is stronger than it has ever been in its history. It's never been this strong. And it's only because of the sanctions. The sanctions have caused Russia to reform itself, to strip away the dead weight that was Western economic influence on the Russian. Because all the West did, people don't understand it. The West dresses up nice and looks pretty, but when it came into the Russian economy, it's like all it is a leech. It attaches itself to the Russian economy, sucks the lifeblood out of it, and takes it away. That's what the West does. They take Russian wealth out of Russia to invest in the West. Well, gosh, thanks to sanctions right now, Russia's still producing wealth, but instead of leaving Russia, it's being reinvested back into Russia. And the Russia I saw, vibrant economy. Every city I went to had, Joe Biden again, build back better. You've heard that one. Yeah. Plan. We're going to build back better. Sounds nice, rolls off the tongue, all that stuff. It doesn't happen. I mean, I can challenge, wherever you go today, whatever city you're in America, I challenge you. Go outside and drive around and you'll see crumbling infrastructure.
Yes.
I don't know about where you're at. I can go here and knock my car out of alignment in 5 minutes easy just by hitting pothole. You've got to be careful where you go, because there's, concrete spalling off of bridges, falling onto the roads. There's rusting metal. You don't know how these trestles stay up because they're just so rusted out. Not in Russia, baby. In Russia, they're rebuilding everything. It's all being built. They are building back better, and that's because of Joe Biden. So in a way, Joe Biden can claim great success. He can claim that he's had the greatest infrastructure development program in modern history, and he's responsible for it. But it ain't taking place here in America. It's taking place in Russia because of Joe Biden's sanctions. Russia now has money that they're reinvesting. Every city planner I talked to, and I talked to a few, have all said the same thing. We got more money than we know what to do with right now. Meaning that, and normally, city managers here in America have everybody coming in saying, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. The citizens are saying, we need this, we need that. They have all these programs that everybody says needs to be done, but they don't have enough money. They're like, we'll give you a little bit here, a little bit, some in our pocket, a little bit here, some in his pocket, a little bit here, but they don't have enough money for everybody. Well, in Russia, they got the city managers sitting there looking at a pile of money, and there's no more projects because all the projects are being done. So they're calling people up saying, hey, if I gave you $1 billion, what could you do? And they go, I don't know, let me think about it. But don't think too long, because we got to spend this money. And so the Russians are there waiting to spend $1 billion. Now, a little bit goes in his pocket. And they wait a little bit longer. Some goes, I'm not going to pretend that Russia's not corrupt. I'm not going to pretend that there isn't corruption in Russia. Anytime you got money, anytime you got people, you got corruption. Okay, and Russia is no different than anybody else. But what I am saying is that the Russian economy is working, it's thriving, Russia's rebuilding, and it's amazing. And again, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe Biden. You did that.
I want to read something that was on RT today, just a little section of it, and I want you to comment on it because it has everything to do with the escalation and the provocations by America and the West. And I'm trying to figure out, are there any sane people in the capitals of the West? Just listen to this. This is on RT today. It is, let's see, it says, this is the article. It's South African delegation stuck at Polish airport. And the article reads like this. The group consisting of President Ramaphosa's security detail and several journalists say they were barred from leaving their plane. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's security detail in a press pool claimed to have been stuck at an airport in Warsaw while en route to Ukraine as part of a peace mission after the Polish authorities allegedly barred them from leaving their plane. The team, consisting of over 100 security personnel and some 20 reporters, departed from Pretoria on Wednesday and was supposed to travel to Kiev to prepare for Ramaphosa's meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. After that, the delegation was set to make its way to St. Petersburg. And here it is right here. Here's a part. Govan Whittles, a South African journalist who was among those stuck on the plane, told RT that the team is apparently no longer a part of the delegation to Ukraine and that Ramaphosa had already made his way to Kiev. According to the journalist, the Polish authorities demanded that the South African president's security personnel surrender their weapons, claiming that they did not have the correct permits to bring them into the country. One member of the Presidential Protection Services was even strip searched by Polish police despite holding a diplomatic passport. Now, how does America think that she can win allies, especially an important ally as South Africa, by antagonizing BRICS nations through her, I would say her junior partners like Poland and Lithuania and stuff? Does anybody in Washington think of the consequences of these off-the-cuff moves by the political leaders?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to. There's a part that's left unsaid in your story. I will bet you a dime to a dollar that the vast majority of the personnel on that airplane looked more like you and less like me. Mm-hmm. All right. Poland is one of the most racist nations on the planet. The Polish people despise black people, despise them, hate them. We know this because when the Russians went into Kiev, there were a lot of African students studying in Ukrainian universities who had to flee, and they went to the Polish border and they wouldn't be let in. The Poles were like, "Nah, you ain't coming in here. We don't let people that look like you in Poland." Blatantly racist. So now they talk about these, they lack the proper certificates or the proper certifications, et cetera. I don't know. Gosh, when Joe Biden makes an unannounced visit to Poland, and of course, no American president flies alone. There's going to be a C-5 aircraft landing with, armored, sedans and Secret Service guys full of guns, none of which are registered. I'll tell you why they're not registered. Because the security protocol for the President of the United States is classified top secret. That means the composition of his security detail is not to be known by anybody. So we're not going to admit what we have in this vehicle, what this guy's carrying, or anything. We don't tell the Poles any of that stuff because they don't have a need to know. We will never let them know. Now, when was the last time they strip searched the Secret Service agents of the United States of America? The answer is never. And so what we have here is a double standard. Poland is upset with South Africa for a number of reasons. One, South Africa is not going to arrest Vladimir Putin when he arrives in Pretoria for the BRICS summit, even though that the International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for his arrest based upon baseless allegations of child kidnapping and I forget what the other one is, but they've accused him of two things that are just ludicrous. But Poland and Ukraine and other nations have said he must be arrested the moment he lands in South Africa, because South Africa signed the accords that bring this up. And South Africa went, nah, we ain't going to do that. And so the Poles are angry. So this is retaliation, simple. The other thing is BRICS. South Africa is an original member of BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Economic Forum, that's actually rapidly growing at the BRICS summit, which is taking place in South Africa, by the way. 19 nations have applied this year for membership. 19, including, by the way, Saudi Arabia, Iran, others, Egypt, Turkey, the whole world. And what it means is that South Africa is part of a movement that's gravitating away from the G7, NATO, Poland, Ukraine, and trying to live their lives free of the interference of the United States. So Poland's exacting their revenge. Now, here's the other thing I'll put out there. Poland didn't do this without instructions. You see, because the Poles aren't in the business of doing this on their own. The Poles were told by the United States, we'd like you to rough up the South African delegation. Send them a signal. And the Poles went, sure, we can do that because we're racist. We have no problem. Because we're going to enjoy doing this because these are black people and we don't like black people. And so we're really going to have a good time doing this. And they did. But to think that the Poles woke up in the morning and said, let's go irritate the government that's hosting the BRICS forum that can have an economic impact on our future. Most sane people go, that's not what we want to do, especially if we want to get BRICS to change their mind. What we'd like to do is actually treat these guys well, and maybe on the return trip, invite them in for some, borscht and vodka and, sing songs and have a good time and bond with them so that the next time we sit down and say, hey, we have concerns about X, Y, and Z, they'll say, those Poles are good guys. So yeah, we're going to sit down and listen to them. You know what's going to happen the next time somebody brings up Poland and South Africa? They're going to say those are racist people, the most racist people in Europe, second only the Ukrainians in terms of their racism. And they're also recognized as American stooges because this didn't happen without America giving a direct order, rough up the South Africans.
Well, what do you think the blowback because just like you and I know that, we know that South Africa and the BRICS nations know that too. What do you think will be the ramifications for this move by the U.S. and the NATO alliance?
What's going on in Ukraine, you mean, or what happened in Warsaw?
Both. What just happened with Ramaphosa's security detail and the uptick in escalation in Ukraine.
Well, I mean, what happened to the president of South Africa's security detail is just part and parcel of the overall arrogance that exists with the United States and its allies. I mean, after all, we are promoting the rules-based international order, which are rules written by us for our own benefit at the expense of everybody else. And yet we want the whole world to agree with us that these rules must be in place because they've been in place and they can't change because we're America. And we say so. And the rest of the world's going, but these rules suck. They're really bad. We don't like them. Oh, you want to hold us hostage to the International Monetary Fund, and that's the only place we can lend it, like you're the only bank in town? Do you remember that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart? Yeah. And they have, Jimmy Stewart has a savings and loans, and then there's this other bank out there that runs everything. The world we live in today is the nightmare scenario where that other bank is the only bank and everybody has to go to them for loans so rates can be set, conditions can be set, and it owns the world. BRICS has decided that they don't like that. So BRICS is actually the modern day version of Jimmy Stewart. setting up a savings and loans, a trust, and everybody can come in and there's fair deals and you can build homes, not worry about losing everything. And it's all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And what does the racist bank do when they see that? They see destroy. So what we're seeing today is sort of a modern day version of the morality play of It's a Wonderful Life. BRICS is the good guys. They're out there saying, we're not happy with the bad guys, this bank that's trying to destroy everything, control everything with bad rules, bad deals, everything. We want good deals. We want to be fair, etc. And the bad guys are trying to destroy them. And that's what we saw with the hassling of the presidential security guard. Also, the United States is starting to panic about this because one of the things that's happening with BRICS, I mean, let's just think about what just happened. The Saudi Arabians say they want to join BRICS, which is an economic forum, by the way. So we're saying that one of the world's largest oil producers wants to join BRICS, bring their economy into the BRICS economy. That's pretty cool. But at the same time, you have this group, this nation called Iran. They want to join BRICS too. And Iran's one of the largest energy producers in the world. And so you have Saudi Arabia and Iran saying, we want to be part of this economic forum. Here's the problem. A, Saudi Arabia used to be America's little boy. You know, basically, America could call up Saudi Arabia and say, hey, remember that oil infrastructure we helped you build? Remember we said overproduce it, get a lot more production capacity. It's going to cost you billions of dollars. Then we want you to mothball a lot of it so it's not being used. That doesn't make any economic sense. We know that's why you're going to do it, and you're going to pay for it. And then what's going to happen is we call you up. You're going to produce more oil so you meet our needs. And then when we don't need more oil, we're going to call you up, and you're going to produce less oil. And the Saudis are like, that's bad for our economy. We don't care because we're providing security guarantees. And Saudis go, oh, yeah, security guarantees. Against whom? The Iranians. They're really bad. Oh, my God, the Iranians are bad. We need help. Secure us, secure us, secure us. And that game was played for about 5 decades. And the Saudis finally woke up. Now, they needed help. You see, this other nation came in called China. China, of course, is a global competitor to the United States. But China didn't sail into the Persian Gulf with a giant fleet, because that's what America has. All we have is a fleet. We have the 5th Fleet in the Persian Gulf and a bunch of airplanes. That's America's presence because we're the good guys. No, the Chinese didn't come in with a fleet or aircraft. They came in with a diplomat. What's that, you might ask? We don't know in America anymore because we don't practice diplomacy. But a diplomat came in and actually got the Saudis and the Iranians to sit down, and they explained the situation to them. The world needs peace. Saudi Arabia, you have a vision for 2030, where you want Saudi Arabia to be. You recognize that the world is drifting away from fossil fuels and that your economy right now is almost solely dependent upon fossil fuels to function. So you want to diversify your economy, create an economy that can survive in a declining carbon environment. But to do that, you need to invest the money you're making from carbon, from energy, into your economy for this diversification. Now, that works as long as you're not diverting hundreds of billions of dollars away from this investment to buy stuff you'll never need. These weapons America's trying to sell you. Now, here's the thing. If you go to war against Iran, Iran will destroy all of your oil infrastructure and you'll be left with nothing. Yes, you will destroy Iran's oil infrastructure and they'll be left with nothing. But the bottom line is you're left with nothing. So this vision you have doesn't exist. All America does is get you involved in wars. Think about it, Saudi Arabia. We got you involved in every Middle Eastern conflict there is. In fact, you're currently involved in several of them. You're involved in Syria. You're involved in Yemen, that big war you started in 2014 that didn't go so well for you. That's yours, baby. You're involved in a covert war against Iran, and I can tick off a few more. So what do we do? What do we do? How about peace? How about not being involved in war? Well, those Iranians, well, don't talk about them theoretically because here he is, Mr. Iran. Come on in, Iran. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Saudi Arabia. You both need to learn how to work with each other so that you're not spending money trying to fight each other. That's America's war. That's what America wants you to do. What we want you to do is make peace and then together work on joint economic development of the Eurasian landmass. There's a lot of money to be made there. You guys can make that money as long as you're peacefully coexisting. And the Saudis and Iranians went, that sounds like a good idea. Boom. And now there's peace breaking out all over. And Saudi Arabia and Iran are joining BRICS. Now, when the American dollar, there's a nickname for it. They call it a couple things. The reserve currency, you've heard that. Why is it the reserve currency? Because everybody uses it. Why? Well, everybody needs oil. Yes, and America has linked the dollar to oil sales around the world. It's called the petrodollar.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But what have Saudi Arabia and Iran done recently? We don't want to use the dollar anymore. Two of the world's largest oil generating nations have said, now we're going to use, how about that Chinese currency? That's a pretty cool currency. Why would they want to use the Chinese currency and not the dollar? Well, one, when you use the dollar, that means all trade is done in the dollars. So the first thing is you build up what are called your reserve currencies. And so you're going to go, because my money can't all be in, if I'm a Saudi, my money can't all be in Riyadh. Right. Because when I call up the Brits to sell oil, they got to wait for the money to ship. No. So what we do is we deposit money all over the world in different banks. And it's there so that when you do a contract, that bank there can immediately transfer the money over. It's all done. Boom. And there are billions of dollars out there. But the Saudis just saw the United States seize $600 billion worth of Russia's sovereign wealth that was deposited around the world. Now, that's called theft. There's no legal justification for it. We just did it because we wanted to do it. And the Saudis are going, wait a minute, but if we irritate America, are they going to seize our sovereign wealth fund? And the answer is yes, of course they will. The Saudis went, well, that's not a future we like. The other thing, Senator Marco Rubio was the biggest help here. You know, that wonderful senator from the state of Florida, the smartest man on the planet. But anyways, he was talking about Brazil, because Brazil just had an economic meeting with the Chinese, and the Brazilian president, the new president, Lula, came out and said, you know, we need to dump the dollar. Basically, we have to start doing transactions using the yuan and using rubles, using anything but the dollar, because the dollar sucks. And Rubio said, they can't do that. You see, if the Brazilians start doing transactions in non-dollar denominations, then we can't control their economy. We can't sanction them. And this is an honest to God quote. I'm not making it up. I know it sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit, and it should be, because Rubio is a comedian, but it's the truth. He said it. And that's really, he gave away the farm on how America views the world. If we don't believe in fair trade, we don't believe in fair anything. If you do something we don't like, we sanction you, because everybody uses the dollar. And we've also created this system called SWIFT, which allows banks to interact with each other. It's a communication system for ease of transfers. And because everybody uses the dollar and everybody uses SWIFT, let's say I'm country X and you're country Y, and we don't even know the United States. Never been there, don't want to go there, but we have to use the dollar because it's the global currency, the petrodollar. And you and I want to do business. And I say, hey, Rashid, I want to buy 400 pieces of X. And somebody in America goes, I don't want Rashid selling Scott 400 pieces of X. None of their damn business, excuse my language, but I say, okay, we're going to sell it. I say, how much? You tell me $100 million. I say $100 million straight to your bank account through the SWIFT system. Two things. The Americans go, aha, silly Scott. You just used the American dollar and you put it through the SWIFT system. So we're going to sanction you. But guys, this has nothing to do with America. It does now, because you use the dollar and you use the SWIFT system. We're going to sanction you. That's how America works. We stick our nose where it doesn't belong. We try to influence everybody by intimidating them, by sanctioning them, by dominating them. And the world's finished with that. They're done with it. And so Saudi Arabia, Iran, and everybody else is running to BRICS. And this scares the living dog poop out of nations like Poland, because Poland is a pathetic little nothing state. All they got going for them is the fact that the United States has decided to put some military forces there. That's the only thing that gives Poland relevance. It's not their great Polish economy. It's not Poland's wonderful history of democracy. It's not anything. They're world-beating military. They're not even good in soccer. So the Poles suck at everything they do, and they, and the only thing that gives them relevance is to be part of this club, and they've done everything to be a part of this club. We joined NATO, and we really like the G7 and the EU. We're part of the club, right? The club, the world-beating club. You told us we're going to be great, but we suck because BRICS is the best club out there, and everybody's going to BRICS right now. And America is telling the Poles, hey, one of the founding members of BRICS, the South Africans of all people, we want you to rough them up. And you know how stupid the Poles are? They did it. They did it. No, there'll be ramifications for that. Absolutely. The other ramification, of course, is going to be this war with Ukraine. Let me just give you a quick news flash. Ukraine's going to lose, and lose badly. They are losing, and there's nothing NATO can do to stop it. And so Poland allowed themselves, I mean, this is literally like if Poland showed up in 1912 at the Southampton docks, and there were 6 liners going across to America. And Poland went, I picked that one. It's the Titanic. Poland is on the Titanic. It's hit the iceberg. It's going to sink. That's the reality. NATO has lost this proxy war. They can't win this proxy war. And the nations that comprise NATO, their economies are collapsing because of the backlash from the sanctioning of Russia and Russian energy. Germany's economy is literally in recession right now. The German, one of the German ministers just came out, they're going to meet in Vilnius in Lithuania for the NATO summit next month. They're going to talk about getting more money for Ukraine, more money. I mean, God, they sound like heroin addicts. I need more money. Money. I got to get my fix. I got to get my Ukraine fix. More money. But they finally said the honest thing. They said, we don't have any more money to give. And that's the truth. And they're not the only ones. In fact, the only nation that has more money to give is America, because we don't care. We just print it. There's no rhyme or reason for what we do anymore. It's just basically what you need. You need $2 billion more for Ukraine. Fire up the press, Fred. Yeah, $2 billion. That's it. We just print money. It means nothing to America. But some nations that have a semblance of economic common sense and structure are recognizing that there's no money left to give to Ukraine. That's the fact. And you're going to see it's not just no money. I think it was the Slovakian minister came out and said, we don't have any more military equipment to give them. Ask the Canadians about how many artillery pieces they have left. Hey, Canada, why don't you send some more artillery shells over to Ukraine? Oh, you can't because you don't have any left. Sorry to hear about that. It's the same thing. And here's the beauty of it. Ukraine, we need more tanks. Why do you need more tanks? Well, they've all been destroyed. Okay, so you need more tanks, right? We need more tanks. Anybody got tanks? Swiss. Yeah, we got some tanks. They're all broken. Literally, they're broken. They don't work anymore. They're all here in a warehouse. We've been stripping spare parts from them for 20 years, but we're going to give them to you, Germany, and then you can fix them up and give them to the Ukrainians. Sound like a good deal? The Ukrainians are like, not really. We'd like new tanks, but nope, you're going to get those tanks. So they're going to go to Germany. Then, come on, man, you got used cars. Well, I'm not picking on all used car dealers, but we know what happens. I come in and I want a Corvette, and they advertise it. Brand new Corvette, barely driven. And I get there and they go, well, that one just left off the lot. Oh, we got this thing for you, Mr. Ritter. Here's a Corvette. I said, but I wanted a 1995 Corvette. Well, this is a 1978 Corvette. Okay, but it's rusty. Not really. We can put some Rust-Oleum on there. Don't worry about that. We'll clean it up real quick. But the engine isn't in there. That's okay. We're going to put a new engine in there. Well, not really a new one. It's going to be a VW engine. It had nothing to do with the Corvette, less power, but it'll go vroom, 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 turn over. And they'll do all this stuff, make the engine start, and drive it off the lot. But the moment I drive it off the lot and get on the freeway, it's going to break down. That's what's going to happen. Every single one of these Swiss are selling to the Germans. The Germans, like all good used car salesmen, are going to get them so they're capable of being driven off the lot. But once they leave the lot, doesn't matter. The Ukrainians are being sold junk. They're being given junk. stuff that just simply doesn't work. It's an embarrassment. We need F-16s, they say. We need F-16s. You know, the F-16 single engine, single seat jet fighter. America started building them in the 1970s. Wait a minute. 70s, 80s. The damn airplane's older than the pilots that are being on the flight. Okay? It's an old airplane. It ain't new. And moreover, they don't work. Here, let me tell you, the first F-16s the Ukrainians are going to get. The Netherlands has 24 of them.
Yeah.
All right? And the Ukrainians are like, we'd like you to fly those 24 F-16s over to Ukraine so we can use them right now. The Netherlands like, a second. Now, we got 6 months left on the warranty. And then when the warranty expires, these planes aren't allowed to be flown anymore by law. We'll give them to you. And the Ukrainians are like, really? Oh, that doesn't sound like a good deal. You're going to give us airplanes that have an expired warranty on them. That's okay. Our used car salesman going to fix them up for you and give them to you. And it's criminal what we're doing to Ukraine. It's literally criminal. You know, and the same thing with the training. I mean, you know, I'm trying to have a sense of humor here. I hope people don't get angry at me for making fun, because if I don't make fun of this, I get angry. I'll swear, I'll throw things, I'll cry, because this is so sad. This is so tragic. This is unreal what's going on right now. So I have to have a little bit of humor, or else I'll go insane. So I apologize if it comes off that I'm a little too much levity, because there's nothing funny about any of this. You know, General Miley just got up there and bragged about the training that we've provided the Ukrainian army. We trained this many, we did that, we did this. Well, first of all, the army that he trained and equipped is dying right now on the field of battle. And I'll tell you why they're dying. Because they don't know how to fight. They don't know how to use the equipment they've been given. And they don't know how to do the tactics that the West has tried to teach them. If General Miley sent an American army to war with the level of training that the Ukrainian army has, the United States Congress would hold an investigation and find him guilty of criminal negligence, and they'd submit to the Department of Justice, a criminal referral, have Miley and the other generals arrested for criminal neglect. We know the Ukrainian army can't win, because we know this because we would never send our forces into combat with the level of training or the equipment these guys have. They've received new equipment. They get a modicum of training. They know how to turn it on. They know how to drive it left, right, up, down. That's it. They don't know anything about the proper tactics to use on this. Well, wait a minute, Scott. Didn't they get a month-long course in tactics? Yes, they did. A month-long course in tactics, which means they know nothing. Imagine, for instance, if I were trying to make you an expert on quantum physics. I mean, a real expert, Rashid. I'm talking about you're the guy that NASA's going to turn to send the ship to Mars. You're going to do all the calculations and all that stuff. Well, you shake your head no now, but don't worry. I can train you to do this. Okay, but the way I'd have to train you is I'd have to send you to a PhD program. And then when you finish the PhD program 6 years from now, I would send you on a 5-year internship to NASA, where you worked next to a guy who was a real honest to goodness quantum physicist who was planning that stuff. And then and only then would I trust you to be part of a team, a junior member of a team, to do something like that. All right? But no. The Mark Miley method is, hey, Rashid, come here, man. Sit down at your computer, log in. We're going to do a 1-month online class on quantum physics. All right? 1 month. But what about practical training? Don't worry. We'll test you with a little quiz at the end. 5 questions. We'll tell you they're all C. They're multiple choice, but the answer is C. And if you get 3 of the 5 right, you're a quantum physicist, and you can plan the Mars mission. Now, you know what would happen if you took that month-long course, passed that quiz, and planned the Mars mission. What would happen to the Mars mission? It would fail. Correct. So now what we've done is the offensive we're asking the Ukrainians to launch against the Russians right now, against the most heavily fortified part of the world right now. The Russians have built a defense line that is built to their doctrinal standards. And Russian defense doctrine is the most sound, competent defense doctrine in the world. So they built it to their standards, designed by a guy named Colonel General Alexander Romanchuk. He's the preeminent thinker Remember we talked about that PhD physicist? Romanchuk is the PhD physicist of Russian defense doctrine. He studied it. He studied the lessons of this war. And in March, he published a paper on Russian defensive doctrine. And that's his concepts are what they used to build the defenses in the Donbass. They built it based upon his design. They trained the troops based upon his requirements. And then they pulled him out of the university and put him in command. So the man who designed it is in command of it using troops he oversaw the training of and principles that he is intimately involved with. So it's the most competent thing in the world. And now we're telling Ukraine, this is the Mars shot. That's how hard it is to practice. It's like going to Mars. And now we've told the Ukrainians with 1 month of online training, you too attack the Russian defenses. And they can't. And they're being slaughtered. And they have no chance of success. There was never a chance of success. We knew they never had a chance of success, and yet we order them forward anyways. That's murder. That's literally murder. And if there was an honest-to-God congressional inquiry, an investigation into this, they could charge Mark Miley with murder and everybody else involved in this, because it's never had a chance of succeeding.
About Ukraine, why do you think they're now trying to put all the blame on Zelensky? And also, why do you think they're trying to put the blame for the bombing of the pipeline and everything else on Ukraine when everybody knows that the United States and maybe Poland had something to do with it? I mean, it's not even believable, because they put out stories before that they thought people would buy, and it was openly rejected by the world. And now they're trying to quietly put it all on Zelensky and Ukraine. Why is that right now?
Let me give a little course on how to read into certain things. Today, I'm going to instruct people on the CIA. That's the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, used to be the head of the CIA. And he gave a speech in Texas where he laughed. Someone asked him a question. He said, "Oh, come on, man. We trained to lie. We trained to cheat. That's what we do. That's what we do." Well, it's one of the few honest things he said, because the CIA is not in the business of telling the truth about anything. They lie to presidents. They lie to Secretary of States. They lie to Secretary of Defense. They lie to everybody, because their job isn't to tell the truth. Their job is to protect secrets, or steal other people's secrets. So one of the other things they do is covert operations. Now, the beautiful thing about covert operations is it's supposed to be deniable. Deniable, okay? Another thing about the CIA is that it doesn't like to talk about anything dealing with the CIA, because that gets into what they call sources and methods, how they do work, how they collect information, etc. So the reason why I bring that up is you need to understand that the CIA, when called upon to say things in public, will never tell the truth, ever, ever, ever. So now the New York Times is publishing a story where they say the CIA says, stop. That's all you need to know. The CIA says, stop. Everything that follows is a lie, because the CIA genetically can't tell the truth. And I challenge anybody in the CIA to tell me otherwise. Want to know how I know this? Because I worked with the CIA for a long, long time. I worked with them in the business where you're supposed to have trust, and you expect them to tell you the truth because you're supposed to be on the same side. They lie even when they don't need to lie. All they do is lie. They don't know how to tell the truth. Seriously. I don't even think they tell the truth amongst themselves. And I know they don't. How do I know this? Let's just call in, somebody who's retired, because you can't get an active duty CIA guy to admit this. But give me a station chief, a senior case officer, the guys who go out there and recruit spies for America. When was the last time the CIA recruited a good spy? I'm not talking about the walk-ins. I'm not talking about the guys who come in and basically say, we want a spy. They're the ones that make it easy for America. I'm talking about the CIA doing what they're supposed to do, which is we need to get a guy next to Putin so we know what's going on. So how do we begin the chain of recruitment up through the agents of access, boom, 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 till we actually get a guy on the inside? That's what they're supposed to be doing. They don't do it. They can't do it. Why? Because your junior CIA officer shows up at the station and says, I want to serve America. I want to start recruiting people. And he starts looking at the requirement. We need to get a guy next to Putin. To get that, I need to do this, that. I'm going to start by recruiting this person there. I'm going to study their habits. I'm going to do everything they taught me in school, how to recruit people. Study, da-da-da-da. Meanwhile, his boss is getting a phone call from Washington. Hey, what's your monthly report? Ah, damn it, Ritter just showed up. He hasn't recruited anybody yet. Well, tell Ritter get on the ball, and if you don't get your numbers up, you're not going to get that nice job in Miami. Son of a bitch. Okay, Ritter, how many people you recruited? I haven't recruited anybody, boss, because you know I'm working on this access agent here. It's going to take me about 6 more months to gain the trust to get near that person so I can begin recruiting up the chain so we get the big guy next to Putin. Forget that access person. Go out there and recruit me a bunch of whores, taxi drivers, drug addicts. Here's some money. Go buy some crap, write some reports up, generate paperwork so I look good so I can get the Miami job. Damn it, you're ruining my career. I go, if you don't do this, you're going to be shuffling toilet paper in some Timbuktu. Oh, gosh. So I go out, but there's not that many whores for me to recruit because they've all been recruited by other people. So I make whores up, literally. Just make them up. I sit there and I talk about Renee, the beautiful redhead that I met on a stripper pole, and she claims to have done a lap dance for Pablo, who drives a taxi cab, who sometimes ferries the guy with the briefcase with the money. I just make all this stuff up. Write paperwork, turn it in. You get a promotion, Ritter. You're a brilliant case officer. Meanwhile, I'm so depressed, I go to the bar and I start drinking because all CIA officers are alcoholics. The ones that aren't alcoholics are the ones who went off in some paramilitary gig, twisted their knee, trying to stop drug operations in Pakistan, came back with pain, and found out they liked the oxycodone, and they said, hell, oxycodone, but the doctor's not going to give me as much of that as I need, so I'm going to start shooting heroin. Hey, now I'm a CIA officer, shooting heroin, drinking drugs, hooking up with hookers, hanging out, snorting coke, because that's what they all do. And then what happens is the polygraph comes in. They've all been trained to beat the polygraph. But the beautiful thing about the CIA is if you just tell the truth on the polygraph, you'll pass it. So they sit there and they go, have you had an illicit sexual relationship in the last year? I've had 26 of them. Well, Scott, you might want to look at that. The standard is we allow 15. 26 is a little too much. You can only have 15 illicit sexual encounters. I'll work on that, boss. Have you done any drugs? Yeah, I snorted cocaine last night and I shot heroin last week. Well, Scott, you know our policy on drugs. We're not too tolerant on that. You might want to clean that up. Got it, boss. You have a drinking problem. Boss, you and I emptied a bottle of whiskey last night. You know I have a drinking problem. Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, Scott Ritter passed the polygraph. He's an honest guy. He's a good CIA guy. Move on. That's how it works. CIA sucks as an organization. They can't do the job they've been given to do. They don't want to tell the truth about it, so they lie. They lie about everything. From the moment you enter the CIA to the moment you leave, all you do is lie. So now we come back to why I'm talking about CIA and lies, because when any story in the newspaper begins, the CIA says, stop. They lie. Nothing they say is the truth. And on Nord Stream, they're saying this because one of the CIA's job is to lead you down the wrong path. They sit there and they sprinkle it with nice information. But the American people are so stupid because we've watched too many, Matt Damon movies, The Bourne Identity. We've watched too many, spy movies where the CIA people are good. They're not good. They're not good. There's not a single one of them that's good because they all lie. But we sit there and we become in love with this notion of the wonderful CIA agent out there saving the world. They're not saving anything. They're drunks. They're alcoholics. They're drug addicts. All of them. All of them. It has to be that way in the case officer business. And then imagine being the person managing the case officer. Oh, you're going to be drinking big time. Then imagine yourself being the analyst that has to assess the crap that comes in. You're going to be drunk too. The CIA is full of alcoholics and everything. That's it. CIA, you disagree with me? Sue me. Let's go to court. I'll do the discovery. But I can't because it's all secret. So you'll never get to the truth here. But the fact of the matter is the CIA's business is to spread disinformation. So why is the CIA talking about anything? It's the CIA. It's not supposed to talk about anything.
Right.
If somebody wants to talk about what if this was real, what's happening here, you'd never see the word CIA involved in it. First of all, we'd find a cutout to talk about it. If this is real, if we really want to tell the truth, we're not going to talk about it because that gives away sources and methods in the human intelligence business, and nobody talks about it. So the moment the CIA is talking about it, they're lying because they're not supposed to be talking about it. We get other people to talk about it. That's what cutouts do. That's what proxies do. That's what real intelligence services do. They never talk about it, so people go, I wonder what the CIA thinks. And the fact that you don't know what the CIA thinks means the CIA is doing it right, because your job isn't to know what they think. But the moment you say, well, the CIA says, do you understand what just happened there? You allowed them to play upon your own preconditioning into believing that they're actually a competent organization capable of telling the truth, filled with honorable people who are looking for the national security interests of the United States. They're not. They may have started that way, but by the time they get to mid-rank and senior rank, they've all been corrupted. Every single one of them has dirt and blood on their hands, and they're all liars.
Well, Scott, what do you think about the rumors going around that Zelensky may be dead, or the defense minister was killed in a hypersonic strike on a NATO facility?
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. When the Ukrainians decided it was a good idea to send drones against Moscow, the Russian government said, okay, this is a red line you've crossed. We're now going to start taking out decision-making centers that are involved in this thinking. And they hit a couple. They hit one in Odessa that dealt with the British were involved in that one, sending the underwater drones and using the grain deal to attack the Russian fleet. So, boom, they took that one out. They hit another one in Kiev that dealt with the intelligence service, because they're the ones who planned the attack against Moscow. Boom, they took that one out. They took another one out in Western Ukraine that was involved in some of the logistics support to get this material in that helped them strike these different targets. So they took that one out. The the reports are mixed. Was Zelensky killed? Was he wounded? I don't know. I mean, there's no definitive answer to that yet in the public arena. The same thing with Budunov, the Ukrainian intelligence officer. At first, he was declared dead. Now, some credible sources have come out that said he was just gravely injured and that he was medevaced out to Germany, where he's receiving life-saving treatment at a U.S. military hospital there. There are reports that dozens of NATO personnel, including Germans and British, were killed and or wounded by the strike, and those were flown out as well. So I think it's safe to say that at least 3 decision-making centers were hit, and that there were serious casualties taken by both Ukraine and their Western proxies amongst the personnel that were there. And whether or not the seniors are dead or just wounded or just intimidated and running for their lives, what we do know is that their public profile that they used to have prior to the attacks on decision-making centers is gone. They're not out there flying the flag every day, making stupid statements every day. They don't exist. So either they're scared, they're dead, or they're wounded.
So I just wondered, why does Zelensky not want to be in Kiev right now? Because it seems like he keeps dodging the capital of Ukraine.
Well, we can say what we want about Zelensky, but apparently he doesn't have a death wish. I personally don't believe the Russians are in the kill Zelensky mode just yet, because it's a major escalation to take out a head of state, and understand that once you go down that path, you've put a target on yourself. And so I don't think Putin's in the business of killing a head of state just yet. He is in the business of destroying the credibility of Zelensky, and I think they're working on that. There's an election coming up in March of 2024, and the Russians are working overtime to undermine the legitimacy and confidence in Zelensky, so that there will be a political revolution to replace him, and so I think there's a lot of that going on now. But I think, Zelensky was told early on in this conflict that Putin wasn't going to kill him. The main reason that Putin wasn't going to kill him is that Putin wanted Zelensky to agree to a peace treaty. But then when Zelensky turned his back on the peace treaty, the one that was supposed to be signed on 1 April 2022 in Istanbul, but Boris Johnson flew in from England and said, no, NATO won't let you do that. If you do that, we stop supporting you. And so he backed out, condemning hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians to death. But nobody cares about that because we don't care about Ukraine. At that point in time, Zelensky started to lose value to the Russians. The Russians continued to let him operate, continued to let him do things like, broadcast live on the internet to the U.S. Senate or to the British Parliament. I have to tell you that if I were in, let's say I was in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, and I was in charge of targeting Saddam, and someone told me Saddam's going to be doing a live internet-based, they didn't have the internet back then, but Saddam's going to do a live internet, live satellite feed to, the Communist Party of, Timbuktu. I go, really? Let's track that feed. Let's blow that thing up. I do things like how many places in Iraq can handle live satellite feeds? Find me the satellite links, locate them. Scott, we got 15 targets. Okay, let's look at the 15. Where are the vehicles showing up there? We got vehicles showing up at 8 of them. Let's do analysis of the vehicle composition. 4 of them fit a presidential profile. Take out all 4 sites. Bomb them all, kill everybody in there. But Scott, there might be innocent people there. I don't care. You see, this is war, and that's a command and control target. If we kill Saddam, we alter the course of the war. And so the 100 innocent people that we're going to kill tonight is nothing compared to the thousands of innocent people who we're going to save by killing Saddam. Take the target out. It's lawful under the laws of war. Boom. That's what I would do. Kill Saddam. So Zelensky's out there doing the same thing, and the Russians know exactly where he is. They kill him? Did they silence him? No. Would have been their interest to do so theoretically, because Zelensky's garnering support. He's raising billions of dollars to build up his army. He's sustaining the credibility and viability of Ukraine. So one could make the case that killing Zelensky would be a good thing, except that the Russians aren't in the business of winning a war, or at least they weren't. Russia was in the business for the longest time of getting Zelensky to the negotiating table, to bring a rapid conclusion to this war through negotiations. And you can't do that if you kill the guy you're supposed to negotiate with. When Zelensky authorized, or at least stood aside while the Kremlin was attacked, what he did at that point in time is he stopped being somebody the Russians could work with. Russia's not going to negotiate with Zelensky now. They don't care about him. Putin's speech just made it clear that he views Ukraine as a wasted nation. There's nothing that can save Ukraine. He will not deal with the thuggish, brutal Nazi regime. That's what he called Zelensky. And Putin's the kind of guy that once he puts a label on you, he's not like Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden, for instance, you remember with Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, after he had Khashoggi carved up and melted down in acid, made his body disappear and all that stuff in the Istanbul consulate of Saudi Arabia. Joe Biden, he's a horrific guy. He's a pariah. I'm going to treat him like a pariah. Yeah, I'm not going to hug that man. I'm not going to shake. I'm not going to do business with him. I'm going to isolate him. Hey, Joe, we need oil prices to come down. You need to go to Saudi Arabia and beg MBS to increase the production of oil by 1 million barrels a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, MBS. Fist bump. Sit down, buddy. See, Joe Biden's a liar. He's a hypocrite. He stands for nothing. Putin, on the other hand, when he says you're a Nazi regime, there ain't a snowball's chance in hell that Putin's ever going to pose in a photograph next to Zelensky. Isn't going to happen. Zelensky's finished, done. But I still don't think that the Russians are in the business of killing heads of state yet. I think Zelensky will be neutralized as a political leader, and that Russia's doing everything they can to accomplish that.
Well, what is this thing about the depleted uranium that the United States is openly saying that they will shipped to Ukraine. I always thought that when Britain publicly announced that they would do it, I thought it was the United States nudging them behind closed to just test the waters to see what Russia's reaction would be. And I thought that when Russia didn't react the way with a fierce with fierce action, I thought this opened the floodgates for the United States to say, okay, we probe them. We don't fear escalation. We can put some more. We can put uranium in there. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, first of all, when they call it depleted uranium, I wish they called it something else. I mean, that's technically what it is. But people automatically say, well, that's nuclear. That's radioactive. That's it. It's not. It's depleted uranium, which means the vast majority of the nuclear aspect of it has been removed. It's just toxic metal with very low level beta radiation that comes out of it, even lower level gamma radiation. You get more gamma radiation going out in the sun than you get from depleted uranium. And the beta radiation is harmless unless you get it in your lungs. Here's the problem. When we use depleted uranium penetrators, they tend to vaporize as they do what they're supposed to do, which is to carve through enemy armor. And when it vaporizes, it gets into the air, into the soil. And then people down the road will breathe it in. Now you have that beta particle lodging in your lung. And over the course of several years, it can produce cancer. It can poison your blood supply, et cetera. If you get enough of it in you, like they do in Iraq, then the women who have children, because, gosh, the wonderfulness of the miracle of life is that the embryo attaches itself to the mother. And the mother's blood supply actually goes through the embryo to bring life to the embryo as it grows and grows. But what if the mother's blood supply is toxic because of depleted uranium? And the blood that's flowing through the infant is toxic, is poison, and it causes birth defects to that embryo. So it develops into a deformed child, which happens all the time in Iraq because of the depleted uranium that we used. It's not the radiation, it's the toxicity, it's the poisonness of this stuff getting in the system. And we know this. There's nobody can say, well, this is unproven. No, it's proven. Okay. The United States has decided we're amazing. The World Health Organization, because it didn't do X, Y, and Z on the Wuhan virus and blame China on everything, we hate the World Health Organization. They're horrible, except when we need them to falsify reports about depleted uranium toxicity in Iraq. Then we love the World Health Organization. So, again, hypocrites. Everything America does is full of hypocrisy. But here's the problem. The British supplied depleted uranium rounds with their Challenger tank because the British at least were honest enough to say, if we don't give them depleted uranium rounds, the Challenger tank can't kill Russian tanks. Well, newsflash. Wait a minute. I thought all Russian equipment sucks. No, the Russian equipment's the best in the world. Better than anything we got. And the only way a Challenger tank will be able to kill a Russian tank is with a depleted uranium penetrating round. Especially the newer models of Russian tanks, the T-80s, the upgraded T-72s, T-90, Saltbreaker, with its reactive armor and its other special systems on it. Let me tell you why the U.S. is talking about sending depleted uranium rounds. First of all, the U.S. is getting ready to provide between 30 and 50 M1 Abrams tanks to the Ukrainians, about a battalion's worth of tanks. Now, these aren't the good M1s because, remember, we don't like the Ukrainians. So we're getting them the bad M1s, the stuff with the really bad armor that can be sliced through like a hot knife through butter by anything the Russians have. But don't tell the Ukrainians that because they'll be scared to try it. But that's the truth. It's not the good armor. But there's a medal going to be given out to a Russian lieutenant in the next couple of days, probably the Hero of Russia award. He led a 2-tank assault detachment probe Ukrainian lines. And they went out and one tank hit a mine and then got hit by anti-tank round and was irretrievable. The 3-man crew lived. They got out and they took cover. His tank comes up to provide cover for them, and he's attacking the Ukrainian lines firing. His tank was hit 14 times by the Ukrainians. 14 times by the best that the Ukrainians have. And the tank lived. Now, the 14th time, I think it blew off a tread, so the tank couldn't move anymore. So they had to get out of the tank, and then they evacuated. He covered the guys. There were some wounded guys. He was a hero, fired off his machine gun, covered the rounds, and the 6 guys escaped. But that's not the moral of the story. The moral of the story is a Russian tank got hit 14 times by the best that NATO could give Ukraine, and it couldn't stop the Russian tank. 14 times. Now you know why America's providing depleted uranium rounds to the Ukrainians, because without that, the M1 couldn't kill anything. The standard M1 round, but a non-uranium depleted uranium round, isn't going to penetrate the armor of a T-90 assault breaker tank. Okay? The depleted uranium round probably won't, but it's the best we got. So we're going to give it to them, because even a simple Marine like me knows that if you're hitting the tank 14 times and it's not dying, you got a problem. And that's the reality. The Russian tanks are hard to kill. And that's why the United States is talking about providing the depleted uranium rounds, because anything less than that, then we're going to have the specter of 50 M1 tanks burning on the ground in Ukraine. Oh, and we're going to have that specter, by the way, because all those tanks are going to die.
Well, we have in the chat, Chris H says, very good explanation, Mr. Ritter, on the specific dangers of depleted uranium. You taught me something too that I did not know. I wasn't aware of that. I always thought that the depleted uranium was like almost like nuclear weapons or whatever like that. And so I learned in the day myself. Also, someone had a question. They said, where is it? Just pass it. None in particular says, question, who is being trained to succeed Putin? Is it Medvedev? That's what he's.
Is it Medvedev? Well, first of all, Vladimir Putin, I think in, I could get the year wrong, the last presidential election, which, let's see, it's a 6-year term, 2024, 2018. In the lead up to that, there were major constitutional changes done in Russia. And they were done for a couple of things. One, to make it possible for Vladimir Putin to rule for several more terms. We'll get to that in a second. Two, to reshape how Russia is governed at the highest levels, where the areas of influence are, et cetera, including the relationship between the prime minister and the president. The reason why this was done is twofold. One, the system that Putin was operating from prior to that was a system he inherited from the Yeltsin government. And the Yeltsin government in the 1990s was a system of democracy or democratic-based rule that was imposed on Russia by the West. Now, the reason why Russia is concerned about that isn't so much the origin of it, but the dynamic involved. You see, it's premised upon the idea that power is derived from the people. And so getting the people to participate, to vote, to express themselves, that will then be turned into representatives who become the government. That works so long as the people have the interests of Russia in mind. And the reason why I bring that up, look at the United States. Could you imagine an election where, well, heck, we know what they say, but imagine what would happen if the Russian government decided that they wanted to buy Donald Trump and make him an agent of Russia, and that they did X, Y, and Z and all that stuff. Would the American people put up with it? And the answer is no, we know the answer, because Donald Trump was accused of all that. Remember that? He was accused of being an agent of Russia. Now, it was all a lie. You know that too. But it doesn't matter. We know how America would act if someone said that a foreign government is getting involved in the domestic political affairs of the United States. We would not like that at all. And yet, that's all we do in Russia, you see, because we built this system, and then to sustain it, we put in these non-governmental organizations that then receive money from the National Endowment for Democracy, that's a CIA front, USAID, that's a CIA front, and I could just go on and on about CIA and MI6 fronts. And they pour money in there to create these institutions that are designed to shape the public of Russia to do not what's in the interest of Russia, but in the interest of their Western masters. And so Putin saw through this and he shut it all down. But what you have now in Russia is a dysfunctional system, a system designed by the West to be so-called democracy, but the democracy has been corrupted by the West, who are trying to buy the votes instead of letting the votes percolate up from legitimate domestic sources of, influence, etc. And this is an ongoing assault on Russian democracy by the West. And I think what happened, again, this is speculation on my part, because I haven't picked up the phone and called Vladimir Putin, and if I did, I don't think he'd answer. And even if it did, I don't think he'd talk about this with me. That's okay. I'm an analyst. I'm allowed to do some analysis. So here's my analysis. The Russians realized that the system that exists is fundamentally broken and that it will never achieve the results Russia needs it to achieve as long as foreign entities continue to try and corrupt it from within. And this is where you get your Alexei Navalny's, a CIA recruited provocateur. That's what he was. He doesn't work for Russia. He doesn't care about Russia. He was recruited by the CIA when he came to Yale for his little 6-month internship. He was fed back in. MI6 provided him money. CIA provided him money. And he got arrested by the Russians for corruption, and he's going to rot in jail as he should. He's not a political prisoner from this extent that Russia's trying to suppress his right to dissent. Russia just doesn't like him working for the CIA. So what Putin did is he changed the system. And I'm not going to get into the details of the system. I actually wrote a paper about it a while ago. But the system requires Russia to grow a national security team that is capable of protecting the national security of interest regardless of who the president is. That's the important thing. So right now, Russia has a very strong president. And so we don't see the role played by the National Security Committee today. They play a supportive role. But if Putin had a heart attack and went away and a new president came in, the system is designed that the United States can't turn that president into Boris Yeltsin. Because that's what we've always wanted to do, is turn Putin into Boris Yeltsin. Putin doesn't play that game, so we continue to try and tear him down. So if Putin died today and they put somebody in, the United States would immediately try to turn him into Boris Yeltsin. And the new system that has been put in constitutionally is designed to prevent that, to preserve the structures of power, political power in Russia, so that the interests of Russia are best looked at, not the interests of other nations. So that right now is the priority of Putin, is to strengthen these institutions. If there's time, I'm sure he will seek to find a successor. Look, the man is 70 years old, okay? And as healthy as he looks and sounds and acts, we all know what happens as you get older and you cross that threshold into 80. Fact is, we have an example of what happens. It's called the President of the United States. All right, so that's not theoretical, ladies and gentlemen. We can watch it play out right before our very eyes. All right, the Russians, I believe, have enough pride. I think Putin has enough pride that if he ever even got close to that threshold, he would withdraw. And I think that he's smart enough and has enough he's humble enough that he would have somebody in mind. Now, is this democratic? No. America has made it impossible for Russia to develop as a democracy. All right? That's something that Russia might be able to do down the road when America stops seeking the strategic defeat of Russia, when the CIA stops playing games in Russia. Wouldn't it be nice to have an American commander-in-chief that turned to the CIA and say, I forbid you by law to be involved in the domestic political affairs of Russia? By law. And if I ever find out that any of you have done that after I've issued this order, I'll have you tried for treason. Want to play that game? Let's play that game. Fact is, oh wow, you're looking at me squint-eyed like what? 7 days from Sunday. Remember Joe Biden? Chuck Schumer. You mess with the CIA, they got 7 ways from Sunday to get you, or 6 ways from Sunday. I don't know. I can't count. Well, then you just shut her down, and you don't shut her down gracefully. You go in with U.S. Marshals and you arrest them all, and you try them as criminals because most of them are criminals. I mean, if the CIA wants to play games, America should understand that this is an illegal outfit that we have working in our country, full of criminals. They don't care about you. They're not here to protect you. They only care about the CIA and promoting the CIA. They need to be shut down, but everybody's scared of shutting down the CIA. Don't just send in the U.S. Marshals and shoot them all right? Because they are rabid dogs that need to be shot. I know that's unfair to many CIA people. You don't deserve to be shot. I apologize. You do deserve to go to jail, though, and be tried as the criminals that you are. It's not a good organization. It's not looking out for our interests. And you notice I didn't say send in the FBI, because that's another criminal organization that we don't want to have anything to do with, too. So shut that thing down. I'd say send in good cops, but I think as we found out, there's not any such thing as a good cop anymore. They're all bad cops. Scott, how dare you say that? There's good cops out there. No, they're not, because every cop has seen another cop do something bad. They didn't say anything about it. That makes you a bad cop, because a cop's about enforcing the law impartially. And so if you're a rookie cop and you see the sergeant beating the crap out of somebody and it's illegal, and you said, I'm not going to say anything because I care about my career, then you're a bad cop, because you put your career above the law, and that's the bad definition of cop. Every cop in America is a bad cop. Maybe some of them could be reformed. I don't know. But we have a problem, America, because this corruption, this empowerment, this entitlement the police feel, believe me, in the CIA and the FBI, magnify it by a million. These guys are the most entitled people you ever met in their lives. They don't know the Constitution. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in brute force. And they're going to try and overthrow the government of Russia, and that's why the government of Russia is going to do what it's doing. I personally believe that sometime around, 2024, the next election, that would make Putin 74 years old. If he wins that election, he'd be 80 years old. I think even Putin understands that ain't going to happen. That's not the route he wants to go. So I have a funny feeling that Putin will secure this next election in 2024. And then he'll probably spend the next 2 years finding a successor. Now, he's not going to take too long to find the successor, because the moment the word gets out he's trying to find a successor, the CIA is going to try and corrupt that. So, but I think he'll find a successor. And right about the time that he's 76 years old, Vladimir Putin is going to transfer power to his designated person. Now, that's what happened to him. Boris Yeltsin transferred power. And then there was an election down the road, and Putin won that election. So I think Putin will identify a successor, bring him in, and then have the system, make sure that this guy wins the next election, and then the guy's on his own, because now he'll have 6 years to develop himself as a leader. Putin will be out of the picture. Not totally. He'll be part of the National Security Council. Remember that thing I talked about that's there? So Putin's now going to sit in there like this, like the Godfather. And, the guy's going to be, the guy sitting up there talking, and every once in a while he's going to look over at Putin, and Putin's going to be like, no, we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is this. No, we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is this. And we're going to do that. I think it's going to be something like that. Is it ideal? No. But it's what's going to preserve Russia, which from the Russian perspective is all they care about. They don't want to. Prigozhin is not going to be president.
I had to put it up there.
No, that isn't going to happen. I think even Prigozhin knows that isn't going to happen. I think Prigozhin is just very good at trolling right now. It's amazing. We have all these tools that exist. Twitter. Who's the best damn Twitter person in the world? Medvedev. The man is a brilliant troll. He could write a book on how to troll on Twitter. Dmitry Medvedev. The guy is a genius. And Prigozhin has mastered Telegram, his channel, how to give a speech, how to give a thing for influence. I'm not saying I agree with what these guys are saying. I'm just saying that in terms of influence, these guys have mastered social media. They're very, very good at it. I'm jealous. They're so good at it.
Mm-hmm. So, Scott, I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I want to ask you, what do you think Ukraine will look like in the next few months to a year? And what happened to the so-called great offensive or counteroffensive by Ukraine?
Well, the great counteroffensive is done. They couldn't even get to the first line of defense. There's three of them. So in order to crack the Russian defenses, you got to get through all three lines of defense. The Russian defensive system, I read the paper written by Romanchuk, by the way. The first line is sort of designed to be broken. Those crash tests we do where we take really expensive cars, and I'm always frustrated when I see this because I'm like, please don't crash it. I'd like to drive it. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. But no, they're going to crash it. And they crash it into the wall or into a barrier. And the whole idea is to build a car that absorbs the impact and then wraps itself around the driver so the driver lives. That's the idea of a well-designed car. Well, the Russian defense is that way too. It's designed to crack where the Russians want it to crack, let the Ukrainians come in, and then they're pounded with artillery, airstrikes, and they're dispersed and they all die. So you have this flexible defense in the front, sort of this soft area to receive them, shape them. And they're going in that, they get shaped, then they hit the first line of defense, and it breaks where the Russians want it to break, and they move on to the second line of defense, which is a steel wall that holds them in place. And the third line of defense is where the counterattacking force is. It comes in and it slaughters them. So understand what I said. The way the Russian defense is designed to function is that the enemy breaks the first line, reaches the second line, and then gets destroyed by the third line. The Ukrainians haven't even reached the first line. Okay, they're trapped in the soft zone. They're trapped in the Neverland. They didn't get through the minefields. They didn't get through the barriers. They didn't get through anything. Scott, they took 5 villages. Those 5 villages were meant to be taken. Okay, it's not like the Russians went, we're going to fight here like it's Stalingrad. Let's do this, boys. The Russians went, all right. They're coming to the village. Back off, guys. They come to the village and they go, fire for effect. Boom, 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 boom. Dead. Hey, guys, tend to hold here a little bit. Hey, look, we're Russians. We're fighting. We're fighting. Come and get us. And the Ukrainians go, there's Russians. They're fighting. Let's go get them. Boom, man, landmine. Damn it. Because the Russians sucked you in right where they wanted. Now you're in the landmine. They hit you with the artillery, the airplanes, and you all die. Ukrainians haven't gotten to the first line of defense. And they're not going to get to the first line of defense. They can't get to the first line of defense. And even if they do, and they say, this is a great victory. We got to the first line of defense. I'd say, read the paper. The Ukrainians are supposed to get to the first line of defense. And then it breaks where we want it to break, and they get sucked into the second line of defense where they all die. So people, this counteroffensive, and again, Putin said it started on June 4th. And what I've learned about Putin is when E.F. Hutton speaks, people should listen. Okay, so if he says it started on June 4th, it started on June 4th. And, here we are, June 15th, 11 days later, and there's over 10,000 dead Ukrainians. How's that going, guys? Now, remember, the army they built was 60,000. They've lost 1/6 of them already, dead. Tanks, 150 tanks. I think they were only provided with like 300 of them. So half are gone. Wow. 500 infantry vehicles, but 200 of those are gone. How's it working out, Ukraine? You haven't even gotten to the first line of defense yet. And you're not going. You're not going. That's the reality. This counteroffensive is over.
10,000?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, do you think that they will push?
Welcome to war, baby. Welcome to war. Modern war. It ain't what we've been doing for the last 20 years. I'll tell you that.
Well, with Putin's speech, and he said what was formerly known as Ukraine, do you believe that they're now going to just push up to the Polish border and just?
No. I do believe that, Putin's a very cagey guy. And again, he's one of these leaders that I like because he doesn't waste words. Okay. We have a lot of politicians that go out there and just speak all the time just to hear them talk. And what happens is when you speak all the time just to hear yourselves talk, sometimes things change and you have to backtrack on your words. When was the last time Putin backtracked on his words? Putin's only done it once that I'm aware of, when he apologized to the mothers of fallen Russian soldiers. And he met with them and he apologized. He said, in 2014, they offered me, we could have destroyed the Ukrainian army. I had them surrounded, could have destroyed them. But the French, the Germans came to me and said, please, please, please choose peace. Choose peace. And they offered the Minsk Accords. And so Putin went along, he chose peace. And so from 2014 till 2021, this peace that he chose resulted in thousands of dead Ukrainians, many of them Russian Ukrainians, people he's supposed to protect. And they're dying because the Ukrainians never chose peace. So he apologized. He said, I should never have done that. I should have finished the job then. And I regret not making that decision ever since. Understand what he just said, that the West lied to him. He believed their lies. He chose peace, and it was a mistake. He will never believe in the West again. He will also finish this job, and that's an important thing to understand. He will finish this job. And the way they're going to finish this job now, here, back in February, he gave a speech where he talked about the mission being the consolidation of Russian control over the four territories, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk, and the continued economic and social development of Crimea. That's his priority. So the implication was that should Ukraine choose peace, that's the limit of the Russian advance. Everything else will be Ukraine. But now we have people of influence near Putin saying right off the bat that because Ukraine's going, well, we can't sit at the negotiating table with that there. The guy said, well, that's not going to be there. What's going to be there now is you have to give us Odessa, you have to give us Kharkov, you have to give us Nikolaev, you have to give us Dnipropetrovsk, you might have to give us Sumy, basically another 30% of Ukraine. You got to give us. Non-negotiable, give it or we take it. Either way, it's ours. Russian majority population there. You guys have proven yourselves to be Nazi scum-sucking pigs who hate Russians. Therefore, we will never allow you to govern over Russians. So we're taking all the Russian territory. But even then, Ukraine could theoretically exist as a rump state. It would be called a nation. But Putin doesn't talk about that as a nation anymore. He calls it as territories. And he has implied that whatever is governing Ukraine today will not be allowed to exist in Ukraine. And whatever Ukraine is going to be a destroyed nation that Russia will not have the responsibility of taking care of. So he's going to take the Russian territories, and Russia will develop these territories and make them modern. Everything else is going to be destroyed and left for the West. It's the West's problem. And that's the future of Ukraine. And it's a tragedy.
But wouldn't that open up the doors for the United States and NATO to fill that part of what's left of Ukraine with weapons to threaten Russia again?
No, because Russia will just destroy them. Look, however this war ends, there are certain guarantees that anything that's left of the territory we now call Ukraine will have to sign a binding legal agreement that it will be neutral in perpetuity, meaning it will never join NATO and will never allow NATO forces to be on its soil or European forces or any foreign powers to be on their soil. It will be this barren piece of land with no foreign military influence. And so with that treaty, the government can't enter into a negotiated relationship with another power and say, hey, come on in here and help us out. Russia would intervene militarily at that point in time because they'd call that an invasion. And it would have to be an invasion because the government is denied the opportunity by law to ask foreign countries. And so it would be an imposition. And NATO's not in the business in Europe of invading. Well, wait a minute, they invaded Kosovo. I'm sorry, NATO is in the business of invading other nations, but they're not going to invade a nation protected by Russia. That's for sure. So it doesn't open anything up. What Russia does have to do, though, is while they may not physically have to go to Poland, and this is where it gets hard, because sometimes I say this with a smile because I'm trying to be lighthearted, because as I told you, if I don't joke about it, I'm going to break down in tears. When they talk about the destruction of Ukraine, they're talking about the destruction of Ukraine. The Western Ukraine right now is going to be destroyed. That's real, because the only way you can drive the Nazis out is to inflict so much pain on the population of Western Ukraine that they have no choice but to flee. And unfortunately, that means that because almost all of Western Ukraine are Nazis, that we're going to be talking about 10 million refugees going. Now, they're going to be welcome here in the United States. Why do I know that? Because 60 miles away from where I live in Ellenville, New York, the Nazis have a park, Heroes Park, and they have a statue of Stepan Bandera and Shostakovich and other Nazis, murderous thugs, the worst vile people in the world. And it's right here in America, Heroes Park. And they have a celebration every summer where the little Nazis come out in their brown uniforms and they wear their nice little Nazi ties and they have their Nazi torches and they hold up their Nazi portraits and they sing their Nazi songs. So they're going to welcome these guys in. Canada certainly loves Nazis, so much so that their deputy prime minister is a Nazi, Chrystia Freeland. She's a Nazi. All of the Ukrainians in Canada are Nazis or Nazi sympathizers. So they'll go there. Australia likes Nazis, so they'll let them go there. So these 10 million people will be dispersed around the world. Well, they'll live in diaspora, but they won't be allowed to live on the soil of what is currently called Ukraine. Poland has dreams of moving into Western Ukraine and taking it over. Isn't going to happen, because Russia's not going to allow a situation to exist where you have a quasi-independent entity that's vehemently anti-Russian, where resistance can grow. So Russia is going to create the conditions in which that can't exist. And this doesn't make me happy, because this is going to be horrible for the people of Ukraine. But they've made a choice. They've opted to support evil. And when you support evil, you pay a heavy price.
Well, in closing, what do you make of the former NATO Secretary General saying that they had already made they had already made plans to get Ukraine into NATO in 2014, and the United States and everybody denied that they ever had plans for Ukraine, but there's a video of him talking, and he's saying that that they're trying to find a way to bring Ukraine in quickly now, because they had already agreed that they would bring them in 2014.
Yeah, you're talking about Rasmussen, the former Secretary General. Well, he's also the same idiot who, gosh, I'm going to get in trouble with my wife. She's going to watch this video and she's going to say, Scott, you can't call people idiots. You can't call people names. You're supposed to be a nice guy, et cetera, et cetera. So if I've insulted anybody, I apologize. And I really do. I don't mean to insult anybody. Just my emotions are a little high right now. So, but Rasmussen, he's the guy who talks about the potential of creating a coalition of the willing, he calls it.
Yes.
Now, there's an operative word there, not coalition, but willing. Because when you use that language, that means that there are unwilling people out there. And when you speak of NATO nations, there's no such thing as the unwilling, because NATO is a consensus-driven organization. So in order to have this coalition, if it was going to be NATO, all NATO members would have to agree. But you can't, so it's going to be the coalition of the willing, which means non-NATO. And if a non-NATO entity moves into Ukraine, it's not protected by Article 5, which means they're all going to die. This is what Rasmussen or everybody else doesn't understand. General Cavoli, the commander of the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, gave us all a hint of where NATO stands last January when he spoke at a Swedish Defense Forum. Asked about the conflict in Ukraine, he said the scope and scale of the violence taking place in Ukraine is beyond the imagination of NATO. Again, words matter. If you say it's beyond the imagination, Simple Marine in me says that means you can't imagine it. Right? Beyond the imagination. Can't imagine it. If you can't imagine it, you can't prepare for it. Because how can you prepare for something you can't imagine? So what Cavoli is saying is NATO isn't prepared for that kind of war because they're not trained to fight it. You can't train for something you can't imagine. They're not equipped to fight it. You can't equip for something you can't imagine. They can't logistically sustain it. They don't have the tactics. They don't have anything, nothing. And so that's NATO. They can't fight the war in Russia. And now from this group, that's NATO fighting as NATO. What I'm trying to say is NATO can't assemble a NATO force that's capable of fighting in Russia, against Russia right now, because they haven't imagined it. Serious. And so now you're going to take a coalition of the willing from this force that can't do it anyways. And now they're suddenly going to be magically imbued. It's like Harry Potter came in and gave a spell and boom, they all of a sudden were able to fight. They can't fight. They won't fight. It isn't going to happen. It's all the kind of nonsense that these warmongers do to make themselves feel important, make themselves feel somehow relevant. NATO is very good at allowing Ukrainians to die, but NATO is not very good at showing the kind of courage it takes to do what the Ukrainians are doing. This is my standard challenge to all those men out there, those real men. You know, you beefy guys, y'all go out and buy all your uniforms. Maybe you have some left over when you're in the military a couple of years ago. They don't fit as well because you've been eating and you haven't been going to the gym. That's okay. You were pretty studly back then. But you all were sitting there going, we could kick them Russians' butts. Do it. Do it. And for all you senators, Graham and all you other brave senators, you know, you old fat pastry-eating princesses sitting there saying, we're going to fight the last Ukraine. Okay, I know you can't fight anymore because you're old, you're fat, and you're a stupid senator. But please declare war against Russia. Please. So the American men, the real men, the one in the uniforms, they can go and do what you say they want to do. Because we're, after all, the best in the world. We're the studliest studs that ever walked the studly earth. We're real men doing real men things in a manly way with other men. Let us do it, baby. Let us go to war. Be men. Send us to war. Have the courage. You say you want to fight the Russians. You say you want them to die. We want to kill them. Send us, but you're not going to because you don't have the courage. That's the problem. Every American politician is a coward, a stinking coward. They're willing to let Ukrainians die for what they claim we believe in. But if we truly believed in it, then why aren't we dying for it? Why aren't we the ones out there doing the fighting? And I'll tell you why. Because America can't handle 10,000 body bags coming home.
That says it all right there. Everybody, I want to thank Scott. This is my guy right here. Scott he stands up on his word. And Scott, you'll get the video in about 15 minutes. Thank you, man, so much for joining me. You know I got to have you back on when you get some free time, whenever you get some free time, because you are a busy, busy man.
No problem. I love your show to death. Where's your cohort in crime?
Hey, you know, he just sold his home, and he's in between, like, he's closing it on another home, and so he was telling me he was at an Airbnb or something like that until the closing of the other.
So wait a minute, you're trying to tell me he's homeless, but he's living in an Airbnb. I got to know what you guys are doing, because if that's homeless, sign me up, okay? No, I'm joking. That's a bad joke. But I hope he gets settled, and I hope to see him again, because he scares the hell out of me.
Thank you so much, Scott, man. I really appreciate it, man.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Be blessed.
Okay, thank you. Everybody,
we got to give shouts out to Scott for coming on the platform again. That's my guy there. Hit him up. Hey, man, I got you. And he came on. Now, I want to say this for everybody. Again, before anybody gets off there, let me say, first of all, hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down. It doesn't matter. Just hit one of them. Again, also, the reason there was no live show yesterday is because we had some real, real bad weather. I haven't been to sleep in 48 hours. A part of a tree is partly on my home. It hadn't smashed my home, but it's on there. We had it was flooding up to the knees, all that stuff like that. No power. Haven't had power since yesterday morning. So I'm actually streaming across town at my mother's house in her dining room area. So this is what's going on. So if the power comes on, if they're able to restore power, I'll do a live stream later on today. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me. Also, let me say this again. For the channel members, give it a few days. I don't know what happened. YouTube notified me that they took my monetization, and they said that maybe I'll get it back in a couple of days. I don't even know what I did. I don't even know what you guys did. So it'll be back hopefully in a day or two, or maybe by the end of this week. But I'll be dropping more videos, and we'll be doing a live stream this weekend. And don't forget that Monday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, we'll have co-founder of Scholars for 911 Truth, Professor Kevin Barrett on the platform. I'm trying to bring you the best. I'm trying to give you the best because, hey, if you eat the best mentally, you become the best. All right. On that note, I go out the same way I always come in, with love and peace in my heart for you who loves peace. I love you, but know that the true and living God will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, real truth talk. You can share it and you can use it. And I'm about to send this to Scott too. So y'all be blessed. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Even though you're in the next room over, I still love you. Peace, everybody. I'm out.